Thank you all for tuning in. The following is a presentation of Bald Spots Productions. Be sure to like, comment, and share. Subscribe, follow, whatever it is you've got to do to kick that algorithm into gear and help us reach more people.
Yes, it is I, your humble host, Bill Hatch, III, coming to you live from the palatial studios of Bald Spots Productions here in the beautiful city of Malden, Missouri. Joining me from safe social distances across the country are my guests for today, Regan Forston. How you doing, Regan?
I'm doing great.
And Stells Di Rossi. How you doing, Stells?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, Stells, I know you just moved up to the Bay Area they're in California.
Oh, we're neighbors.
And Regan, where did you say you're coming from?
Well, I'm probably right by Estelle. I'm right here in Marin County.
Oh, okay.
So,
wow, beautiful areas up there. Yeah.
Oh, I tell you,
you're closer to each other than you are to me.
Yeah. Before this, I was living in Mexico for a couple of years, and then in Hollywood for a lot of years, and it's kind of been all over the place. But I love Marin County. It's like a little bit of heaven here. It's beautiful.
I bet. I had a guest a couple weeks ago who lives in Mexico as well. She and her husband for 3 years moved onto a boat off the coast of Mexico, and then got a place in Mexico, and I think she said they're going to be in Puerto Vallarta now, and so a different kind of a piece of heaven. But yeah, that's funny that you mentioned Mexico. Okay, usually I start off by asking everyone the same question. What are you reading? And Stells, we'll start with you.
Ladies first.
Ladies first. I'll be a sexist.
I actually do a lot of audiobooks. There's this really cool app that I do called Healway, which gives content notes. I read about 3 to 4 books a day. It's called Healway or Headway. I can't remember it right now on the spot, but I think it's called Healway or Headway.
Wow.
It's through my iPhone. And it's a lot easier when you're on the go with everything to just be able to hear a book. But I've been doing a lot of like self-help work or things, looking up to prepare for industry-related stuff with music or modeling, and just kind of been in a cocoon phase. So I've been somewhat reading, but more listening lately.
Cool. Sure. Yeah, I'm doing a lot of textbooks right now, and I really wish I could just listen to them. It's such a drag to have to read them all, because they're not the most fun you could have.
So what's
Headway? Oh, okay, cool. Stells, what pick one that sticks out in your mind that you've read recently? What's something
really
you've gotten out of?
That talked about how the art of how people conversate in sociology,
share with everyone.
How people don't always listen even though they think they're listening, and it just helped me as a person, especially within networking, to learn how to actively engage in the art of conversation. It's also a perk for things like this and interviews. So I'm always considering myself a lifelong learner, and this listening book really made me see that I had been passively listening to people and not actively listening to what people have said. And it gives all of these techniques for how to actually engage and to ascertain things. And I found from this actual book, I've been able to improve quality of life by just adjusting how I listen.
Yeah, I have. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Regan.
Well, I'm just gonna say, like, as a therapist, I've had to learn to really super listen to people. I mean, it's really important as a therapist that you have 100% focus on your client, and not be thinking of what you're going to do after they're gone, or be distracted by other things, because you can't really feel that person or get to know them good unless you just really just listen.
Yeah, I have some pretty bad ADD. Oh yeah. So yeah, I have the I don't have the hyperactive kind. I have the inattentive kind. And so I really have to work hard to focus on listening to what my guests are saying. But of course, I also have to think of, because I do stream of consciousness in the interview style. I also have to think of new questions to ask to keep things rolling.
Yeah.
So sometimes there will be a bit of a delay between listening and asking, because I have to really actively listen and work pretty hard at doing so before I come up with something to ask next. But yeah, to answer your question that you asked, and I stepped on, Reagan, I am currently engaged in getting my MDiv in a concentration called Marketplace Ministry, and out of Regent University in Virginia. And so right now I'm taking a class on missions, and the books I'm reading are Transforming Mission, I think is the doctor's name, and then the other one I'm reading is The Mission of God by Christopher Wright, and it's really great. It's an incredible book. It talks about a holistic approach to missions, so that instead of just going and just God, it's also talking about taking, which is of course important. You can't have missions without evangelizing. It's part and parcel of what you do, but it talks about a holistic approach to missions, where it also focuses on taking care of people's practical needs. He's been talking about the environment, social justice, and taking care of these things that are quite often ignored by mainstream missions people. And it's pretty cool. He was just talking about an organization called A Rocha out of Portugal, that has kind of a specialty in their field of looking at environmental concerns, and making sure that a person's environment is taken care of. Pardon me, I have a hair in my mouth. I need to shave.
It's fall. It's right up.
You think my stubble's a little too long? But so it's really been interesting. I have I have a huge stack of notes from this about how the love of God includes people's practical needs and not just their spiritual ones. So that's what I've been reading. What have you been reading, Reagan?
Well, I've been so busy lately, I haven't had a chance to read much. But
how dare you?
I just ordered a new book put out by the University of Virginia by Jim Tucker called Before, and it's case histories. So, the University of Virginia has been studying reincarnation for about 40 years.
Interesting.
A wealthy person passed away and said, well, I'll give you this millions of dollars to the University of Virginia just for the study of reincarnation. So they started a whole whatever you call it over there. They have about a half a dozen people working full time. And what they do is people contact the university who have little children who say that they've lived before, like 2-3 years old. And they're talking about, you're not my real mommy is so-and-so and whatever. Well, anyway, they send a team or a person to interview the child to get as much information as they can. And then they send a team of people out to try to prove whether these things that the children said actually happened. And they have hundreds of cases now that they have where they've been able to go back and find, I'm thinking of this stuck in another book I read previous to this. This is their new book now, but one I read, Ian Stevenson was the man who was the head of the department for a long time, and he passed away. Then Jim Tucker took it over about 10 or 15 years ago. But Ian Stevenson went to this one village in this one country, and this little girl it talked about that she lived in another village, which wasn't too far away, and she had a husband and some kids and everything. Well, the parents knew of this village, and they went there and asked if there was somebody of that name there, and they said yes. And so here's this little girl. She walks in and she sees this old man who was her husband in another lifetime, and it's this little girl. She starts getting really angry with him because she looks at this old man and says, you promised you'd never remarry again when I died, and you remarried, and here's this little girl that's talking to this old guy who was her husband in another life. But that's interesting because what they're trying to do is, because we use hypnosis, which is the easiest way to access memories of where you were created and everything that you've been. But they didn't want to do that. They just want to say, this is little children who haven't learned all, so people can't say, oh, they heard this story from so-and-so, or they saw it on TV, or, something like that. Just the innocence of children, so I can't wait to get it just to read some of the
That is
cases,
very
because they get you thinking, with these little children.
Interesting. Did you know that in China and its
Whoa.
territories,
Wait,
it is
what?
illegal to reincarnate without written permission from the government?
Now, is that a joke, or that's really true?
No, that is actually true.
Wow.
It's not that the Chinese government believes in reincarnation. It's that they don't want the Tibetans to say there's another Dalai Lama after the current Dalai Lama passes. And because of course, they have all the troubles with ruling over that territory, or over that country, because it really seems like it's a bunch of, baloney. We'll go with baloney. I'm not feeling like swearing today. Not that you guys can't. You're welcome to if you like. But I don't censor other people. But my parents are going to come by for a visit later today, and so I'm kind of getting my brain into that mode. Self-censorship. But and the Dalai, so the current Dalai Lama has threatened that he will not reincarnate in Tibet,
he's choosing
outside of Tibet.
Choose where he can exist.
So they'll have a government in exile still.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Fun fact about other countries and weird laws about
basically.
Spiritual preferences. When I was living abroad in Guatemala, I actually did work with a lot of missionary groups down there. So I like what you're reading, Bill. But there was a strange case in Santiago Atitlan of where they believed that there was a shapeshifter in the village. And apparently the Guatemalan court has a law that there's this story. I don't know if it's just myth or what from the local village, but they were saying that there was a woman who was found murdered, but her killer wasn't convicted of murder at the time, because when he shot her, he said that she was a panther or a cat that was shape-shifting to spy on him. So apparently they used magic as a defense in court. And I was like, whether he murdered a cat or a person, he still killed something, and it's in court. So they just let it go. That's what I was told as some kind of story while I was living in Santiago Atitlan. So it's not strange to hear about the whole Dalai Lama can reincarnate, where he chooses people and tend to do very odd things.
Okay. Yeah, it is. Yeah, I was watching a YouTube video last night, and the reincarnation thing came up, and there was also stuff about that you can't wear flip-flops in this one town in Italy, because people have gotten stuck, because between the parts of the town there are rocky outcrops, and people will try to hike from one part of the city to another, and wearing flip-flops just isn't conducive to that. And so you can get a fine if they catch you wearing flip-flops.
It's like a cultural law.
And which is funny
Yeah.
because I almost always wear flip flops.
Micromanaging their
Yeah,
people,
pretty much.
Okay, but
Yeah.
this thing about reincarnation,
Uh-huh.
that with this research we're doing and everything, it's like God doesn't care whether someone believes in it or not, or whether it's real or not. It's not really the issue. The issue is what your mission is now. What you're doing in this life. I mean, that's
Sure.
where the focus should be. But really, when you look at technically, we only do have one life, because we're in the research we're doing. We find out we're created in heaven. All right, that's where we're created in heaven. So from there, we just decided to pick different bodies or different lifetimes for learning purposes and that. But it's like an actor who is in the movies. They choose a particular role and they learn from that role, and then they go back home. And then they pick another role, and then there's somebody else, and they go back home again. So in a way, when you look at it that way, we just have one life. One life with many bodies, rather than when the other. So,
one life
it
to
makes
live.
it way to kind of, at least maybe understand the concept, or to feel that this is a possibility. But we're so much greater than like the three of us now. And the personalities that we have. We're much greater than that. This is just something like, Bill, look at all you're learning now and everything you're doing. You just had this big move. So you're in for a new experience, meeting new people. And, your life is actually going down a different road than it was a few months ago,
Right.
Where you've changed your, you've changed your trajectory, so
it
things
is like a new life. You're right. It absolutely, it's completely different, because I went from living in a city of 300,000 plus,
and I did
to a
opposite.
city of about 1,500 to 4,200, depending on who you ask.
Wow.
Apparently the census says there's about 1,500 people in Malden. Yeah, it's ridiculous. There's one grocery store, and one little Walmart that doesn't even carry everything that a Walmart normally carries.
Oh wow.
We used to live in.
There's one coffee shop and no Starbucks.
Yeah. So are you running from the law or something? Why did you go to a little town? Did you have relatives or what?
No. No, what it was is California was just too expensive, and nothing I do requires me to be in any given location. So my side business, which is going to be helping businesses automate their systems through an AI powered system, and that doesn't require me to be anywhere. I don't have to meet with clients. I can do that over Zoom or what have you. And then this, of course, I've had guests all over the world, so why not me be all over the world?
Right.
And so my cousin and I, we were able to move from Orange County, where we were paying $1,600 a month for a 1-bedroom apartment, to a place where we paid $35,000 for a house we needed to put a little sweat equity into.
Nice.
So we've had to do some work, some plumbing and electrical and that kind of stuff. And my office isn't fully set up yet either. Still got some drywalling to do, and I got to put up my new bookshelf and stuff, so it looks more like an office. But it's really it's just
I feel like we did
the running from the law
opposite.
thing's just a funny aside.
I feel like my
no, not running from the law. I haven't done it. I haven't been caught doing anything.
I went from a town called Summit, Arizona, where there was no Walmart, no stores, no nothing. Everything was 15 miles or more away, and it was in the middle of the desert. It looked like I had just been an outlaw that escaped the law versus like trying to run. And then I moved to the Bay Area, where there's transit. There is no Walmart near me, and everything is faster. Going from having no neighbors for miles to being in a flat, and just it's been kind of a 30-day shift of everything. But coming back to me, like after 26 years, it's factory senses coming back slowly. So I can totally relate. It sounds like we're doing opposites and parallels at the same time, Bill. I was going
Yep, yep.
through a
So
lot of
what
harassment,
instigated your move?
racism. It got really
Self.
bad in Arizona. It was just not a good place for me. We had people go as far as unplugging a concert during Juneteenth. The newer bass player that I had, somebody actually attempted to assault them, racial slurs, spitting, people attempting to mess with
Wow.
our mail, people just completely. I had never experienced anything like this in my life to this degree, and I was constantly advocating and fighting to break the stigma of creative apartheid, and just Arizona was not ready. I was doing a lot of interviews and things and speaking out and just opening a lot of eyes, and I got Josephine Bakered. Another issue was health. The heat in Arizona is not the kindest. It was affecting myself and my family. And there was a lot of hospitalizations.
Wow.
And my condition that I have that is
Right.
rare, I was not making antibodies to the ecosystem. So Arizona literally hated me. If it wasn't hate speech, it was the actual trees that I couldn't breathe. I was getting sick and weaker. And we
Wow.
just did tests medically to find out where I could go. And it turns out I had to go back to where I was born, the Bay.
Wow.
Wow.
Tucson
yeah,
was going
I
through a
mean,
massive
how are you handling
inflation
how
after
expensive everything is
2020.
there compared
The
to where
rent
you came from?
here is actually cheaper than the trailer out in the desert that I had. It was getting ridiculous. They wanted $2,800 a month for a trailer with just zero maintenance. We had a slumlord. The racism was so bad in Tucson, they sent an email
Wow.
to the housing
That-
to just cancel an inspection and left us with holes in the floor, air conditioning that didn't work, and an apartment 30 degrees hotter than it should have been. And I got tired of fighting people to be heard constantly and consistently, and I just square peg round hole. I got tired of
Wow.
it. So I'm just like, you know what? I'm sick. I can't breathe here. I'm dying here. My family is getting affected here. It's just not worth it. So I went home.
Yeah. Yeah. Huh.
Wow.
You know, I'm having some allergy problems. I mean, just minor compared to what you're talking about. Not really a comparison, but what my father suggested, he said it worked for him, was to start taking a
I
tablespoon of
exacerbated to the
local
point of
honey
where I
every
have
day.
26 pages of food
And he
allergens,
has
and
terrible
every item
allergies.
in that family I cannot eat, as well as having environmental allergies and sensitivities. I almost died. And this happened right after close to the last time
Wow.
that I saw you. So we had to cut out
Oh
everything.
my
I literally
gosh.
went 2 years just living off of eggs and
That's
Wow.
zucchini.
crazy.
I have a very limited diet of about 10 things. And being in Tucson, I didn't have the options. So I was going into rapid malnourishment. Meanwhile,
Wow.
still touring, still playing, still gigging like a beast, but having breathing machines, biological injections. They couldn't even give me allergy
Yeah.
shots still because I'm allergic to most of the things. It's a very
Yeah.
rare immune disorder called hypoglyceminemia.
Oh
And
my
my body
gosh.
no longer produces antibodies to other things. Took me a while to say that
Yeah.
word. But it's easier to tell you what I
Sounds
can
fun to
do or
say.
can eat versus what I can't. And it's a total mess. Like I can't eat out.
Yeah. I don't think I could
Thank
repeat it.
you. I'm where I have more food selection. That's one thing about being back in
Well, you
California.
look really
It's an
good.
agricultural state. So I don't have to worry about getting more fruits and vegetables that I can eat. And I don't get sick
Yeah.
as much. But in Arizona, everything was just so
Mhm.
limited. I would have died had I stayed.
Yeah. Wow.
Man, oh man. Yeah, it's so interesting. Just every once in a while, I'll meet somebody that has so many
I had
allergies.
I
and
had
you just wonder, have you been that
I
way ever since
had extreme
you can
allergies as a
remember
child, so I knew what
still,
foods
or
to
is
stay
this
away
something that
from.
came on
But
in
something happened in
in
2019
adulthood?
where I was living in a place that was with a slumlord, and due to where I lived, they just didn't have the due diligence that they needed. The slumlord got away with it. I had a ceiling and a floor cave in on me, and there was a basement that had been retaining water and the black mold, and I had 4 hours to get my stuff and run. After exposure to
Oh,
that for a
wow.
year, my health declined, and we tried to report the
Ooh.
guy. We tried to call the city. I got zero assistance. Like I was losing faith in humanity out there, and it was like everyone was watching me die, and there was really no community that accepted me. People just wanted me to get on stage and entertain them, and
Yeah.
I really felt dehumanized, and that, with the stress of being ill, just exacerbated everything to just constant crisis and worry and being sick and unable to keep the food down. And it just, Arizona was a nightmare. I don't think I'll ever set foot in that state again.
Yeah.
Wow, that's me. I would expect prejudice or whatever you want,
Um,
you call it, to be
Arizona
more
is
prevalent where Bill lives than I
it's
would in
apartheid.
Arizona.
It is
Sometimes
so far
it's just
behind in southern Arizona.
just cult.
It is just now starting to get to where Latin culture is more
Wow.
recognized. Like for Juneteenth, they didn't
Wow.
even really publicize it, even though the University of Arizona had it on their actual medical campus. There was zero support from the city of Tucson, like as far as people being there. Nobody cared. I was in Tucson.
Wow.
I
Wow.
was in Tucson.
So
Yeah,
were you
and they
close to
actually
Tucson where you
silenced
live?
me there no matter how many
Because
interviews.
I just
Rich
visited
Fashioned
Tucson for the
magazine had
first.
declared me an icon in the industry there because plus-sized women of color that play rock music is rare. I had a lot of people that would try to force me and pigeonhole me and be condescending, and the
Yeah.
chauvinism and the why don't you play black music? And I'm like, well, I just play music because music has no pigment. And they just could not understand what that means, or the black community, which felt that I wasn't black enough, coming
Mhm.
from an international family. My mother's Egyptian, my father's Sicilian. So there is not diversity there if you are not one of their constituents. It's really bad.
That's ridiculous. How do you deal with something like that? Because I've been in areas where I've been in the minority, but not it like when I visited the Philippines years ago now. We my former in-laws took us all over the place, and they didn't limit us to tourist areas where there might have been other white people around. So we were going to places in the Philippines where there weren't where they had maybe never seen a white person, and so I was head and shoulders above everybody. And my story is kind of funny. I mean, we were at a restaurant eating, and you know how somebody's staring at you really intently, you can kind of feel it burning a hole in you. And I felt that, and I turned and looked.
Not
And normally, when
staring.
you turn and look at the person who's staring at you,
Yeah, I
to
live in
like
that
look
world.
away, try to
I
pretend that
live
they
in
weren't
that world.
staring at you. This woman did not stop. She kept staring at me, and I mean, it's kind of a funny thing that, it's like I wasn't living in that world. It was just a funny story that I can tell people. I mean, I lived in the South before, where I was told I should write a book about my summer being a black man, and because I lived with an African American family in Tennessee for a summer while I was finishing up my associate's degree at Austin Peay State University in Tennessee. And so I've had little experiences of being the different one in the group, but I've never had what I would call a bad experience.
I think
It's hard for me to understand, how do you deal
multicultural
living
family
in that?
of
I
international
mean,
people.
really?
I was raised to be a citizen of the world and not a pigment, because the De Rossi family has people of all walks of life, all countries. Like we have family in England, Scotland, Italy, Brazil, Sicily, America. We're everywhere. There were Rossis on the Titanic, for Pete's sake. So, and then you have my mom's family, the El Gendis, which are actually, they descend all the way back to Nefertiti in Egypt.
Wow.
So I already was raised with a worldview. However, being in California, growing up in the Bay Area and Central California, it was never really a problem. It was more like small instances. Traveling as a musician, you learn to spot it. You learn how to just work through it, because you can't talk to a psycho like a normal human being. You just look at the trait, and it's like same script, different actor. There's a protocol that you learn to work around it. And you just keep going, because at the end of the day, you don't give this person free rent in your headspace. They're not worth it. It's not worth throwing your life away. You have to work around a lot of jumps and hoops and dips and dives, which causes a lot of distress after a while and frustration, because the world has not come to terms with the fact that racism got a facelift. It's become more of a microaggression. We've only been desegregated 70 years since the civil rights movement, I believe. And in 7 generations, people have kind of just done out of sight, out of mind. And then you have, both ends of the extreme. There's the racism, and then there's the reverse racism. Being a person who has grown up multicultural and taught the worldview and being creative and being more of a humanist, you learn to kind of understand what people are on a frequency. And it's kind of like when you're in Racistville, you got to use, instead of a regular plug, the 220. And when you're in regular Coolville, it's great. And then when you find the people that aren't racist, it's like Bluetooth. You just click in and it syncs automatic. So I have to kind of feel people out every day of my life and kind of say, okay, you learn to read their body language, their posture. There's just certain things. And you start to notice that people who are on that wavelength aren't even conscious that they're doing it. And you can't just avoid everyone, because it's everywhere. I mean, the jerks are everywhere. They're mobile. They have cars. They get on planes too. They exist the same way that you do. However, being angry with someone who is not ascertaining that what they're doing is so childish, you just have to remind yourself you're speaking to a kindergartner as an adult. It takes a lot of self-discipline, and it hurts, but that's why I have creative tantrums with painting and guitar. And I use my art to educate people to tear down those walls.
Wow. Yeah,
So,
that's big. Go ahead.
Stell. So I don't know much about you. So you're
I am
a singer or a DJ,
activist.
or
I do
talk about music
a lot of stuff.
and
I
so what do you do?
podcast. I do music. I model. I do a lot of philanthropy. I believe in breaking down stigma, stereotype, and just social walls. It's like I'm their karma. So I tend to like to put people in situations a lot like one of my idols, Josephine Baker, who would not perform to segregated audiences. Well, I bring people together with music and art. I talk about what is relevant. I talk about things and express it. I fit a lot of different categories. I'm a plus sized, so I went into plus size modeling to break that stigma and did runway. I wanted to get away from the stigma of just because I'm a big Black woman, I should be singing Aretha Franklin, and continue my grandfather's work. My grandfather was the guitarist for the Cleftones, and there's a lot of musicians in our family. My grandfather wanted to play rock and roll, but he was pigeonholed into R&B. So I picked up the guitar and continued his legacy as a rocker, and I'm the first one to do it in the family since him, because everybody else fell into the hip hop, gospel, R&B genres due to the whole segregation of the Motown industry at that time. There was white America and Black America, and all of the radio stations were separate. The towns were separate. It was apartheid. And my grandfather struggled with this creative apartheid, which is why I took up arms, because as I became an artist, I began to notice the same thing, and I see that what they used to do with bathrooms and water fountains during segregated times, they're doing still creatively. You have this genre, this genre, this genre. They're really not celebrating the culture. They're segregating. And I think that people have not recognized the microaggressive subtleties at all.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. Well, I'm getting more of a perspective of things having to do, even with people's sexual orientation or color and that sort of thing. Because when people are going through a life between life process and they're in heaven, most of the time, my clients, they see other souls as energy. On the other, it seems like in our true form, where God created us, we're conscious energy. So but it's funny because I was thinking the other day, because when I have them describe I said, well, what does your mother look like or whatever? And they'll say, oh, she's this glowing orange and yellow. When people are in that hypnotic state or on the other side, when they see people, it's natural for them to recognize them, just like we recognize
How are they going to
bodies,
deal with racism with all
that
the
way.
colored
But
orbs?
then I'm thinking of, well, there's all these different colored energies over there. So if you think it was like, well, you're like
It
purple.
is.
When people that emanate a lot of purple and everything, usually that's a pretty advanced soul. You can usually tell by the colors and stuff that are over there, where they're at. But what's nice
Yep.
over there is there's no prejudice. Everybody just loves just like you'd want heaven to be or the afterlife to be. Everybody accepts everybody helps.
We're all created by the same God,
Yeah.
and it's like we're all made in the image of God, and like the mission of God, the book I'm reading for school, talks about this, of that, it's like, how do we get to hate each other? We can't. We really can't, because if we're in tune with God, that is, we can't hate each
Yes.
other, because you're looking at a person who was made by God, who was made in the image of
God's
God,
word.
and to
Yeah.
hate that person is to hate the Lord. And and it's a way I hadn't exactly looked at the issue before. I mean, I kind of had inklings of it, but reading it really concretized it, and made it into a thing that I can write down. How it works. And yeah, I've never understood hatred. I mean, I grew up in a military family, so we were always surrounded by whatever, and the military doesn't look at your color or your ethnicity or the countries your family came from. You do this job, okay, you're going to be put here amongst these other people who do the same job or complementary jobs. We don't care what you look like. And so I had friends growing up from all different walks of life, and it just never made any sense to me how, it's like when somebody, when I'd hear on the news or hear somebody talking about their experiences, like you, Stells,
What I have,
it's just
I'll
like,
tell you
it's
exactly
something
how it
that I
happens.
just can't
And
wrap my
I
head
actually
around.
studied the
It's like, how
sociology
does this
of it
happen?
since, because it was happening to me so much. And for me to actually be able to
Okay.
advocate and educate, I had to dig into this. And what I found is this: if you go back to the pre-civil rights era, the country was culturally separated. Okay, so what you have is these microcosms in the sociology of communities and families, because everything's in a cosm. And when you have people who have sheltered their existence from other cultures and different walks of life for generations, it's kind of like they become feral folk. And the lack of having anything outside of this makes it foreign and uncomfortable. And everybody knows that awkward thing where they've walked into something and it's new and they don't know how to react. Well, can you imagine centuries of generations of people who only spoke to what they knew or what looked like them? Finally, you get this law that says we've got to let in the outsiders. So you have this reaction to where most people, when you're a kid, you just see your family. Everybody looks the same, and you may see one or two people or a neighbor. But if you imagine an entire community segregated, music is segregated, television is segregated, this kind of level of programming that has existed all this time didn't get integrated yet. So subconsciously, you've been kind of brainwashed to think that this is the only reality. Anything else is not something that you can adjust or deal with, and it's a shock at first. So as you start introducing things into the reality, you're going to have people who don't like it. The same thing happened in fashion with mini skirts, or people with colored hair, or people with shaved heads, or people with tattoos. As society evolves throughout time, some people are just set in their ways. And when these people are passing this on to little children, and then they come home and they stay in their little bubble, anything that bursts it consciously and cognitively shatters their understanding of life as they know it. And then you've got people like the reference where you say that yourself, for example, you've never experienced these things. You don't understand how anyone could defy, as you've said, we're all made by God. Well, if the church you're going to, everyone looks the same, then you don't really understand another culture. If you have one or two people in pockets, that's really not exposure to the culture. It's just a matter of people not integrating and just kind of being stagnant. So this stagnation creates confusion. And then you have people from the stagnant mindset dictating and passing this tradition of stagnative consciousness for generations. It's programmed.
So it sounds. Go ahead, Reagan.
Well, I learned in hypnotherapy college for a couple of years, and we were studying, like how the mind, how we learn, and how we choose to believe certain things. They found out that between when a child is born until about the age of 8 to 10, when children, we've always talked about, well, the children can't do anything until the age of reason. In other words, there's a certain age where as human beings, we start thinking for ourselves. Before then, we don't think for ourselves. We pretty much take in everything. So if you're a young child and your parent is prejudiced, and and you look up to them as an authority figure, whatever they tell you goes in and gets cemented in. That's the way things are. And when I see people in my regular hypnotherapy practice that want to change bad habits or things, it's hard because once it's cemented in there, it's like having to take a sledgehammer and chip away at this thing that's been cemented in your brain as a way of acting, sometimes. So that's why it takes, it's like, since the 60s when we had a big, we broke up a lot of things then, and, we started having the civil rights era. We came a long way, but there's still a lot of cement out there that needs to be chipped away at. It's like we put a big crack in it, and the thing that bothers me is that when the civil rights thing and everything happened, then a lot of people think, well, we took care of that problem. We have civil rights and all that now, but it's just me. Yeah, it got better, but we're realizing now in the Trump era, what Donald Trump has done is he's allowed people to come out with their deep-seated prejudices that they were hiding before, and he's kind of given them a thing like, well, he's doing it, so now everybody's showing their true colors, and so that's one of the things that it's actually a good thing, because now
I do believe you're right about
and now
that.
Maybe we can look at it and move some steps even more forward, But don't you see that prejudice? Yeah, it's all like, it's just, these people were the same before, but now it's all out in the open, where everybody, they're prejudiced. But prejudice is not just about, we think of about color because that's kind of predominant, but I mean, look at India where they just have the caste system. They all look the same.
Same thing with Mexico.
If you live over here in this part here, then you can only do this. There's, because you're different somehow. Look at kids at school that get bullied. They pick on the child that's different than them. Like if a child has a disability. I have a daughter that has she's albino, and she has this oh my God, beautiful platinum hair. I mean, and she's gorgeous. But in school, she was different. So she got made, she came home crying so much of the time because she's legally blind, because with the albino, you don't have the right pigment in your eyes. So your eyes are constantly, like, they used to call her typewriter eyes, because her eyes would be going back and forth all the time, because her eyes are trying to focus. It's like a camera that's not, that's having trouble focusing all the time. And so, just because, so somehow if anybody's different, like look in New York City, where they have all the boroughs of the different ethnicities.
That's what I mean by the microaggressions that society lets slide.
That's your crazy neighborhood. Yeah. What you were talking about, Stells, kind of reminded me of like a sociological equivalent to biological evolution in island and valley systems, where the animal got stuck either on an island or in a deep valley, and so they adapted to their system, and even though they're related to another group outside the valley, they're now different. And so I can kind of relate to it in that way, that these people in those systems became different, and now we're trying to reintegrate them with the biological whole or the sociological whole.
Yeah, no one likes their reality shattered.
To carry the
nobody likes their reality shattered. You do that, and people freak out. And if you can test what they know as gospel in their mind, like Regan was saying, that foundation starts when you're a child. A lot of these people did not have exposure to other people, cultures, or lifestyles, depending on their upbringing. And that's the thing, what a lot of people don't realize is, like what Bill was saying, we all are created by our creator. And like you were saying, a lot of people see things as energy, but not everyone is that complex. The world is a very confusing animal, and everyone's on different frequencies. So you've just got to learn how to dial in on people at their level. And that's how I go through life daily.
Okay. That's, that was definitely a deep dive. Let's come up from there.
Well, it would be wonderful if there was a school that when children are young and impressionable, if they would teach them, they would say, look, be prepared in your life that everybody's not going to be like you, and when you feel uncomfortable, just because you feel uncomfortable doesn't mean you should, in other words, prepare them for this, running up against things that aren't what they're normally used to, I don't know. There's just so much, when a country takes over another country, the very first thing they do is they start indoctrinating the children, because they know, I think of this with Mao Zedong, where they had the, children that were turning in their parents for saying bad things against the government, because they were taught in school that Mao Zedong was like God, and, what he says rules, and that's what they believed, so and look at the Muslims that, put bombs on themselves, and because they've been told, that's a good thing, and they're going to blow themselves up and be happy in heaven, and they believe that, and they don't question it, So I think we're lucky.
We got work to do. We got work to do. We're still evolving. It's a young country, but it does have a lot of hope on the horizon.
Still learning.
Because just look at the three of us sitting here. This wouldn't have happened 80 years ago. Like, not technically, not literally. No one would care. So, just poco a poco, step by step, and having these conversations is a start, and at least people are starting. And that's why we do what we do, to continue to help raise people and their vibrations to something better. It's called evolution.
Yeah. But as Stella, it's part of the journey here. Part of what you chose to do.
I know.
Is with what you're doing, anytime you try to change things, you're going to get kickback. So that's why I think a lot of times when you do that, so it's like something we have to do. I have, in the work I do, the Newton Institute here, we're non-denominational. We're not, we're not trying to push one religion or another. All we're saying is that there's this process that people seem to be able to do where in a deep state of relaxation or trance or hypnosis, whatever you want to call it, people have this ability to go to visit the afterlife for a few hours. It's like a near-death experience without the death part. So what we're saying is we're just saying this is what happens over there. Now here's this information. So now it's up to each individual with whatever they believe in everything to either say, to move a little more forward with more information, what they believe, or to say, no, I know everything already. And any new information comes in, I don't want to hear it. I get pushed back a little bit sometimes too, where people say I'm doing the devil's work or something like that when they're misinformed. But so I just have to get used to that, because.
So Regan, if people want to find out more about you and what you do, your website is visittheafterlife.com.
Yeah, and actually today after this, I was on Coast to Coast a few weeks ago.
Okay.
So I was on 600 radio stations at once.
Wow.
I had about 5,000 people went to my website, and it really made a mess of it. They couldn't. So from a laptop, they can see everything, but from their people's phones,
you jammed the system.
A lot of my pages got. It's all there, but they have to reconfigure everything for me. They're going to do that today.
Really, because I've done some kind of past life spiritualism work, and I think that's kind of why I'm grounded as a person and know what I'm here to do. So I would love to talk with you after this because it seems really cool.
Yeah. Oh gosh, yeah, you're right. You're right. This is great. Well, yeah, this work, I feel so blessed to be able to do this work. Like hundreds of times now, I'm sitting next to people, my clients here when they're in this deep, relaxed state, and they're in heaven, and I'm sitting next to them, and I'm through their eyes, I'm seeing what they're seeing, I'm hearing what they're doing, I'm seeing the healing that happens. Now, Estella, one thing I was going to say for you that might help a little bit too.
Every day.
Since I'm also certified with quantum healing hypnosis through the Dolores Cannon School. You do? Okay. Well, yeah, what I do is when people are in the afterlife and they ask questions of a counsel and they get their questions answered. And then lately I've been saying, okay, now my client has some health issues they'd like to address. Can I ask like Stell's higher self to do a body scan, see if we can find out what's going on? Or do you have somebody in heaven here that's even more qualified?
Yep.
And about half the time they'll say, oh, we have someone here that would be better. And sometimes it's the higher self that pops out, and all of a sudden you're looking at the higher part of yourself, and I have my clients describe what's their higher self look like. And then at one point I asked the higher self, I says, may your lower self, this earthly self, walk into you to see what it feels like to be the whole soul, the whole self. And then my clients will walk in.
It is intense.
Sometimes they're there in trance and they're just going, wow, like, wow, because there's this sense of being whole. But
yes.
The one thing that they all get is they get the reasons why they have their health issues. In other words, they'll say, okay, why am I going through this? Sometimes it's karmic. Sometimes it's just, people have they're just sugarholics or something. They just made themselves sick, But I have a client of mine in Southern California. He's just about to come into $500 million, $500 million. He's a doctor who invented something when he was in college, and he finally got it approved by the FDA. But he's had to go through 15 years of fighting with people trying to steal his invention from him, in courts and because there's money involved. So you get all the greedy people out there. He finally got total everything from it. And it's an ointment that works better than Neosporin. Like if you have cuts and abrasions and things, it heals it really, really quick. And they just changed the name of it now, and I forget what it is. But anyway, a big company's offered them $1 billion. He gets 500 million, and his other friend gets 500 million, who is his partner. But anyway, he has some health issues now, where he has no no saliva like in the mouth, so he's just had to have 8 teeth pulled because he carries a water bottle in his hand every from the moment he gets up until night, where he's just trying to put moisture in there, and he has no tear. His eyes are getting all blurry now because he doesn't have enough moisture in the eyes and everything.
Yeah.
It's I forget the name of it. I want to say Sjorgren, or it's a Swedish name for this disease. Yeah, I mean, so he says, Regan, I'm just about to have $500 million, and I'm the most miserable guy you can imagine because this is just getting worse and worse and worse, So he's on the other side, and they asked the council over there, why, or this healer that was over there, why does he have this issue? And the healer tells him, he says, it's because of the hatred you have for your father. And that's really true. I mean, he has his father who he despises, and so he didn't want to hear that, It's like, he's in trance and he goes, yeah, don't want to hear that. But because he's in that state, I said, okay, you're here in heaven right now, and they're telling you have this illness because of your hatred for your father. Would you like to speak to your father? Because his father's still alive, but like what we found out in our research is that when you both decided to be who you are now, when I decided to be me, we didn't put all of our soul self into the human body. We left about half of us back home. That's why each of us has a higher self on the other side. So he was able, we called up to see if his higher self of his father was there, and he was. And so here they are, 2 souls in heaven, and his human self is hating his father, and his father's there. I got him to go over and to talk to him, and just to have a conversation with him about where all this hatred comes from and what's going on. Well, eventually got to the point where they came to some sort of agreement, and I says, now, are you ready to forgive your father? Are you ready for that? And in that hypnotic state, he said yes. So I said, okay, I want you to energetically shake hands or whatever you're going to do, or hug him or something, and tell him that when you get back to your humans, out from heaven back there, that you're going to start working on forgiving. And a little reluctantly, but he went over and they shook on it.
I would love to
so
see
I'm about
something
ready
like
to,
that.
This is a few months ago, so I'm ready to
see what
call him
would
and
come
see
out.
how he's doing, Yeah.
Your ancestors.
Well, just think about it. If you, on the other side, you have this council of wise elders, and they know all about you, and they're looking at you lovingly and kind, and you ask them questions about your life, and they'll give you. It's like the best life coaches you can imagine. That'll tell you what you need to do. But a lot of times, when they tell people, well, you have to come back and you got to work on your forgiveness for people, or you have to come back and work on your selfishness. You have to be more selfless.
The stagnation.
Then it's up to the person to come back and do that work, or to stay in the same quagmire that they're in.
The thing that hit me was when I first got into being more self-aware, I reconnected myself and I looked at my life and I started connecting with my grandparents who had passed. And they were coming to me in my dreams and they started to warn me. And at first I thought, oh, it's just a dream. And then it started happening. And for some reason, I just kept listening. And then I did the connection of self where you take parts of yourself back into yourself. And I've kind of reached a state now where I'm kind of in a waking consciousness of it. And it's like you get the go card. Everything just falls into line. It's not perfect, but there are things that I call life medicine. And I totally concur with the fact that some of the messages that you're saying that come through, like the person with his father, these are things that are true. This is your life medicine. This is the work that you have to do to evolve as a human. And that's the consciousness that I stay in now. And I stay open to those kind of messages a lot more. Yes.
Well, look at all 3 of us right now. I guess you could call us all light workers, because Bill and his ministries and you doing what you're doing to try to change the consciousness of people, and me trying to get people answers to their life's questions so that they can get going on their missions without complaining and griping. And that's the thing, is when people are on the other side and they find out that they're right in the middle of their mission, and that this is something they chose to come down here to do, to change the consciousness of people, then they stop complaining so much, they get to work, So I think that's a good thing. when people on the other side, the Christians that have come to me, decided to do this, some of them a little reluctantly, but there's something in them that just says, I just know there's more than I've learned here. When they're on the other side, every single one of them has been able to have a conference with Jesus. And it's I'll tell you, I've had tears running down my eyes as they have theirs sometimes, when I can see the emotion and how deeply they how deeply moved they are by the love that they feel from this soul we call Jesus. I mean, it's just, I don't know, it's amazing. And last week, my last client, she's Christian, but she's been studying Buddhism and everything, too, trying to get a wider viewpoint of things. And so I said, well, hey, let's ask if we got all of her questions answered before the council. She went to her soul group, had conversations with people that had passed on and people in her life. See, we were pretty much done. And I said, well, hey, let's see if Buddha's around. Can you talk to Buddha? And all of a sudden there was this orb of purple swirling that was right in front of her, and she recognized that as Buddha. So we asked Buddha, hey, Buddha, have you reincarnated? And Buddha says, parts of me are everywhere, parts of me are everywhere. And then this is how I pictured how she described it to me. From the center of his being, he shot at her like a tube of purple, and she felt it going right into this part of her face, and this purple. And so she's in trance that way, and as she's having all this purple, she's just like almost hyperventilating. It was like, oh my gosh. Well, when she came out of trance, she's talking about, she goes, oh my God, that was the most, never felt love like that in my life. It was just, and her face was still vibrating, from that purple, from that. So whether it's Jesus
have you ever had anybody actually just
the
appear
love
to the
it's
golden
just amazing,
white, just white
what
out
happens.
color? Because that's what happens when
So,
I connect, and people have seen it around me or through me, and they've said that it can command a room. They've also seen it happen when I'm on stage, like when we were playing larger audiences of like more thousands and thousands of people will say that my voice will just send them chills. And one of the things that I've worked on is with sound and energy and music is, while I'm playing, my intent when I get up there is all of you will find peace with yourselves. And then it pushes, and I can bring people to tears, move them, shake them, and they just come flocking to me. It's been crazy since I've connected. And I've noticed that people that are selfish or have deep-seated lower energies, they tend to gravitate toward me, but they mostly want to use me, and they all have this weird cult-like agenda. So I've turned into isolation, meditation, a more sacred style of living, making sure that I eat clean, stay clean, keep my mind clean, stay going. It's been kind of like becoming a rock and roll monk of sorts. But I've noticed that when you vibrate higher, these lower energies come for you even more, the brighter it gets. So have you come into a lot of people that have, like, what in light workers terms, which I am actually a light worker, it's the blinding light, where they call it the blue light, but it's just bright white. I see that a lot when I connect.
There's some chat in Destiny of Souls, which was the second book that Michael Newton wrote. And it's pretty thick, but it's because in the 7,000 people that he personally had go to the other side and come back, he was, after a number of years, he started asking questions about, well, what do these different colors mean? Like when gold or white or blue or purple and everything. And there's a few chapters in the book, Destiny of Souls, where he actually breaks all those colors and things down, just saying what they signify. One thing we use in part of our process to get people really, really deep is we have them imagine golden liquid light. And what they do and they feel is this golden, it's like a liquid light, but it's like this mixture of white light, of gold, and however they imagine it, but they, to help them relax. Yeah, because gold has a very, very high vibration. There's a book. Well, actually, there's a company called Gemisphere. They're up in Portland, and it's interesting. One night, this man, he went to sleep. His wife and him both went to sleep. They woke up together in a dream, so they were both sleeping. They woke up together in a dream. And there was a guide there to something that says, it's time that the world understood about what all the precious stones in the world are, like what their reasons are, what they are used for healing and everything. And they told him, he says, okay, every few weeks at a certain time, I want you both to
Wisdom.
go into meditation. You'll be taken out of your bodies, and there'll be somebody there to give you a discourse on different gems and what God's, what the reasons these special gems are. And so they did that, and they told him that he would remember what was said, and he would write these books. So he's written this whole big giant book, and it's all about, go through each gem that there is in the world and about what their reasons are, what the energies are, what they're good for healing are. And he started this whole company called Gemisphere, and they have the most precious necklaces and things that are used for therapeutic purposes, way. But uh, uh, so, like gold, I forget what, I read the whole book one time about gold was, there's, he has another book to come out at some time in the future, but they won't let him publish these guides that talk from the inner said that the world is not ready for it yet. And it's on the power of diamonds. And because they said, if he brings out and says what these powers are, it could be very
What
well
was his
used
name again?
for negative purposes, because they're so powerful on what can happen, and so
What was
they're
the name
waiting till
again
the
of the author?
consciousness raises of the world enough to where they can.
What was the name of the author?
Pardon? What, Estelle? Well,
Okay.
Gemisphere is the name of the company. Yeah, I had the book, and
Thank you.
I don't have it right now in front of me, and I forget the name of it. But if you go to Gemisphere, then there's a book that's published on it, and it's very interesting. So, yeah, that was just interesting. I mean, all this stuff,
Mhm.
But the monks, the monks were known for having these out of body experiences, and that sort of thing when they would be in these deep meditation. Saint Teresa of Avila, for people that want to know about out of body experiences, Saint Teresa of Avila wrote. She has writings that survive to this day, and they're published in different books. And she talks about how she would go into deep prayer so that she could talk to Jesus herself, and she would find herself out of her body, and Jesus would be there, and he would give her instructions of where she was to start the next nunnery in Spain. And she'd have arguments with Jesus saying, oh, ain't no way that's going to happen. Because up north, where, the monks were actually killing each other because these different factions of monks had battles with each other because of their different beliefs in everything, so it was all political and everything. But Jesus would tell her, says, well, you got to go. It's just where you got to start the nunnery. So she would do that, and miracles would happen, and she'd get that started. And then she'd go back into prayer again. Okay, what's my next assignment? And then she'd have arguments with Jesus again. It's and Saint John of the Cross also, his writings survived. And it's all about how when you pray, if you get so deep into prayer, you put
I think
yourself
that's
into
what
the
I've been
state
doing on
where you can
autopilot.
transcend your body, and
I've been
have
doing
an
something a
out of
lot
body
similar to
experience,
what Teresa's been doing
so
for
you can
2 years,
go
like
right to
ever
the
since I
home
started
office.
dreaming my Nona. And it's been weird. Whatever obstacle
Yeah.
or crisis that comes my way is kind of like a challenge. And then I go into that hyper alpha state of meditative prayer, and I just center myself. I connect with my ancestors. And for some
Yeah.
reason, it's like there's this go card. As long as I do the right thing, as long as I remember why I'm here, and I see who I need to help when they come to me, I go, oh, that's who was going to come. I knew this was coming. And then I help them, or I see the challenge coming and I go, up, this is a test of my patience. This is a test of my diplomacy. This is my test to see if I can go with the flow. And I've really come to understand that energy goes where attention flows. When you live and walk a sacred path, it's kind of an interesting concept. And what I found was, like in my dream, my grandmother told me that I was a bard. And she said that a bard back in the medieval times, bards were the storytellers, minstrels, and musicians. So I started kind of coming into this thing of Stella the Bard. What does Stella the Bard do? Well, Stella goes around musically and creatively just passing out white light everywhere she goes. So it just that's kind of what I have come to understand is my mission. And you've said some interesting things. I knew I had to be here today. I picked this day today. You're here today. Bill's here today. And everything you both have said pretty much confirmed what I thought I was doing. So it's like a confirmation that you're going the right direction. So it's really cool.
Yeah. Bill, since I was here before, I don't know. I went to the other side a second time. I swapped 28 of us therapists, and during COVID, everything we did it on Zoom, where we put each other in trance, and we each went to the other side, and we asked the same questions about COVID and the vaccines, and then we came back, compiled it all, just to see, that's what research is seeing if you can duplicate, like if the guy, and anyway, but the thing that happened in there, because it happened over Zoom, so I'm sitting in my chair, the same one right here, and the other therapist is putting me in, helping me to get into this deep state. And I felt like too much of me was here, not too much there. And, your mind's doing all these tricks like, oh, am I just making this up, or am I really there or something? And I'm before the council, and I'm thinking that, but all of a sudden the council spreads apart, and in walked Michael Newton. And I never met it. He died. I got my training about 6 months after he passed away, so I never got to meet him in person. But when he walked in and he's there with the council, I'm sitting in my chair right here. All of a sudden, I start bawling like a baby. And so part of me is going, okay, I'm really there. I'm really there. So Michael had a conversation with me, and he said, all of us guys over here, all we're interested in, and he said, and what we should be, like all three of us right here, what we should be interested in is just helping somebody to get to the next step of their evolution, whatever it is, like whether it's to get born again, become Christian and study what Jesus is teaching, or to start a meditation practice, or to start a mindfulness thing. He says everybody doesn't need to come to heaven and talk to everything, because everybody's in a different place. So he says, as light workers in humanity, we each have to help each other to be, go that next step, no matter how small it is, that next step in becoming more loving and kind, and that's pretty much all of us should be doing, that way. So that was pretty neat, because that just seemed like, that's what Jesus teaches, that's what all the spiritual teachers have taught. Just everybody, just come on, get out of your comfort zone and do one more step, and one more step.
I'm sorry. The problem
is, that's the whole point of, when people ask me, oh, sorry. No, I was going to say
I'm sorry.
People ask me why I do the show.
The problem with humanity is they tend to try to speak for higher entities, and ego is why
that's okay.
There's so much misinterpretation. It's not that it's complicated to love each other or be kind to one another. It's just humanity is a very interesting animal, and like not all the kids on the bus like each other.
When people ask me the purpose why I do these shows and how I got started, it's all about bringing a message of a better life to people. It's everybody's got something that can add to the positivity out in the world, and that's what I hope to bring to people by doing this show. And I think we've been doing a little bit of that. So
yeah,
today. But I wanted to, before we got too much further, Stells, how can people get in touch with you? How can people find you?
I got to play a whole bunch of interesting concerts and ended up getting signed with an agent, so I'm global now. And you can find me on Instagram, and the tagline is at Get a Little Loco.
Okay.
So you can find me on YouTube at Method to the Madness, and you can find me on Facebook at Get a Little Loco as well.
Right.
I have 3 this week.
Okay. Very
I was in
cool. You got any
Berkeley
gigs
on
coming up?
Tuesday. Last night I was in Alameda. Today I'm playing in Oakland. I'm about
Wow,
to record
cool.
my ninth
Wow.
studio album called The Asylum, which I've been working on for a couple of years now. We have some releases coming out. About a year ago, I actually got named an icon in the music industry in the state
Wow.
of Arizona for changing it, for being part of the LGBTQ community as a pansexual, two-spirited female, and being plus size, disabled, and of color. So it's like all of my weaknesses have become a strength now. And I've learned how to take it and be empowered. Thor Radio is coming back this fall, internationally with Spotify and all the other
Okay.
platforms. You can find Method to the Madness on every music streaming platform out there in the world. So I'm also going to be going into production more with modeling, and my hope to get my magazine going in the next year or so. It's the work I was put here to do. Like,
Awesome.
you
How
talk
do you
about
do it all?
spiritual
That's a
alignment.
lot.
My whole life I was
Wow.
prepared for this, every
That's
instance of my
crazy.
life, and it clicked. And that's why the
Cool.
band's called Method to the Madness, was that spark when I realized why I'm here. So basically that's
Oh,
why I called
lost
the
you there for a
band
second.
Method
froze.
to the Madness, because there's just a lot of
Oh,
creative
this happens on occasion.
stuff going. What?
Actually, what's funny is this won't show up in the final recording.
Oh,
Sorry, we lost you there for a second,
okay.
Stells.
Well, I mean,
Hopefully, it won't show
what
up
I
in the final recording and people hear
yeah,
what you said.
Yeah.
it keeps me out of trouble.
But no, that's awesome. Glad you're busy.
Definitely.
Yep, idle hands are the devil's workplace. Yeah, that's why I'm going to
What are you
school,
going to
working a
school
couple
for?
businesses,
What are you going to school for?
and doing all of my stuff. Is got to keep moving forward. But with that, I think we've gotten to
Awesome.
a pretty good stopping point. Wow, we've done this for more than an hour.
Yep.
So let's see. So Stells, people can find you Method to the Madness on YouTube, or Get a Little
Yes,
Loco
our tagline is
on
at Get a Little
Instagram,
Loco.
and I think you said Facebook too, which is pretty cool. Okay. And then Regan, people can find you at visittheafterlife.com once you get everything straightened back out again.
Yeah.
Hopefully we won't get
in a
you.
couple of-
Hopefully we won't
should
crash
have-
you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
hopefully you have it
that'll
fixed by the time this comes out.
Yeah, that's I have a lot of videos on there. There's actually a video of a young lady going through this life between life process where you can see her actually go to the other side and back.
Okay.
A lot of information, and I'm still giving away. If people go to the site and request it, I have my latest book is Reincarnation is Real, and it's just about all the current research being done all over the world
Mhm.
in it. And right now I'm giving that away if anybody requests it.
Cool.
So
Okay.
just to let people know what's going on.
Sure.
And I also have a regular therapy practice too. I'm doing over Zoom, specializing in PTSD
Okay.
and fears, phobias, anything having to do with extreme emotion. And that's another, you could do a show on that sometime too, Bill. It would really help people, educate people in
Yeah.
this new form of psychology, which is energy psychology, which
Okay.
we're getting instant results where talking therapy might take years. This new energy psychology, people, 3 or 4 sessions is equivalent to a couple of years of talking therapy.
Wow.
So really, really works, especially with PTSD. Most of my regular clients in my regular therapy are women that have rape, incest, or violence that have happened to them.
Mhm.
And they get some sort of semblance of normalcy really quick.
Wow.
Everything is changing in the world right now,
Mhm.
Bill. It's like, it's like all these tools that God's allowed us to have now to propel ourselves forward.
Yeah.
So anyway, they can get a hold of me. There's on my website, there's tabs on the regular therapy where they can actually learn about what we call tapping, EFT, havening touch, which is this wonderful thing that helps balance or creates new neural pathways in the mind, and EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization. There's information, so they can do that.
Okay. Wow, sounds like there's a lot to do on visittheafterlife.com.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I always ask my guests at the end of the show is, do you have any final words for the nice people?
Well, Estelle, can you hear?
Be kind to yourself.
Be kind to each other. That's a good one. Regan?
Okay. Well, I would, you know, I like the bumper sticker. Kindness is love with work boots on. You know,
okay.
People think it's easy to be kind, but it goes against some of our basic nature sometimes, you know, because we want to be selfish all the time. It takes effort. It takes effort to be kind. So don't, you know, put those work boots on, as like I say with Estelle. And Estelle, you can, you know, my phone number is on my website there. You can give me a call or go to my website or something too, because I think it's awesome that she's here in this area.
I definitely want to talk to you because I actually do advocate because I have CPTSD and I just moved here and I don't have a therapist.
That's great.
So you never know.
I can help you there. Yeah, because well, you know, it's funny though. Have you noticed, Bill, too? I mean, different people have on your show that are light workers or trying to help change the paradigm for people in that. A lot of us end up going through a lot of health issues and things, you know, because it's really hard on the physical body. What I was told when I was coming back from heaven and I was looking down at the earth, and my guide, who was next to me, he was confirming with me, did I want to do this work that I'm doing? And I screamed, like, I think I even said the F word. Yeah, yes, I do. You know, I was so like, yes, I want to do this work so much. And then he as I started getting closer to the earth, I started feeling all this emotional pain, and he stopped me and he said, Regan, if you're going to do this work, I'm going to tell you 4 things you have to do, or your physical body won't be able to handle the energy and you'll die. And I said, so I just like, okay, can you tell me what to do, please? You know, I don't want to die. And I think it would be good for anybody. Says the first thing you do, he said, Regan, when you wake up in the morning, is declare yourself as a vehicle for good. And I heard this prayer in my mind. It said, as I wake up, I say, bless this day and those that I serve, as I keep 1 foot in heaven and 1 foot planted firmly on earth to accomplish my mission. So in other words, it's as you wake up every day, and people listening to this, just, you know, we found out with these 70,000 people we've had on the other side now, everybody has a guide or somebody watching out for them. So, you know, you can kind of look up and say, guide, I don't know your name yet or something, but I guess you're there because Regan says it's true, you know, and just say, hey, I'm going to do good today. Okay, what can I do? How can I help the world be a better place? And that sets your tone for the whole day, you know, that way. The second thing they said is spend as much time in nature as I can. They said that's one way that God helps us balance out our emotions and things, is spending time in nature. Like go for a walk along the beach or in the woods, or, you know, just get outside, you know. The third thing he said was to do as many random acts of kindness as you can do. And in my mind, I saw myself picking up a piece of trash that wasn't mine in a 7-Eleven. I was outside. I know it's weird what your mind does. Also, I'm picking up trash and putting it in. And then the fourth thing he said, talk to other therapists and ask them how they keep themselves grounded. You know, because a lot of therapists, the suicide rate amongst therapists is pretty high.
Wow.
You know, because we're constantly listening to all the worst of humanity, you know, that people are having to go through. So I've been doing that pretty good, although I need to get out in nature some more. I've been a couch potato too much of the time, and I need to get out there. So anyway, hope that helps.
Yeah, I'm sure it will. You know, one of the things I like to encourage people to do too in the mornings is to write a gratitude list. Write 10 things, 10 things you're thankful for every morning. Doesn't matter what they are. It can be the same exact list you wrote yesterday. Just write it down, because you have to write it to make it real. It's you can't just think of it. And and that way you can also go back in time and compare how the list has changed over time. And because if you start your day with gratitude, it completely shifts the foot you start on, and all. But yeah, I liked your 4 things, Regan. That's pretty good. So I would like to tell everybody, be safe out there, wash your hands, and remember to watch the ending credits.
Thank you all for tuning in. This has been a presentation of Bald Spots Productions. I'd like to thank our producer, my beloved mother, Eileen Hatch.
I, of course, am your humble host.
I'd like to thank my special guests, Regan Forston and Stells Di Rossi.
Support the show if you feel so led over on patreon.com. We're known as Bald Spots Pro. Don't you dare miss YWL Online. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and wherever fine podcasts are offered.
Be sure to tune in next time when my special guests will be David Richards and Arthur Yavelberg. Be sure to like, comment, and share. Subscribe, follow, whatever it is you've got to do to kick that algorithm into gear and help us reach more people.
If you or someone you know needs support now, call or text 988 or chat 988lifeline.org. That is the suicide and crisis lifeline here in the United States.